What's up, everyone? I am Bucky Brooks, your favorite former Jaguar, and this is Bleav in Jags. And we're super excited today. Like, everyone loves to talk about quarterbacks, and I thought, who better to bring on to talk about quarterback than two quarterback gurus? Matt Sims, Phil Sims. They're joining us to talk all things quarterback. Guys, how you doing?
Matt?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having us, Bucky. I appreciate it. Thank you, Phil, for joining us as well. Thank you for having us. Look forward to talking about the Jags and everything about the Jaguars this upcoming season.
Yeah, Bucky, you're happy to have us on. We'll see how you feel when this thing's over.
Oh, no. We're gonna be excited about it because look, we're gonna eventually return the favor. Sims Complete is the podcast that I'm eventually gonna come on and pay it back. But first thing, before we talk about quarterbacks in general, specifically like Trevor Lawrence, what makes a good quarterback? Like, when you guys are looking at the position, what separates the good from the greats at the position?
Go ahead, Phil. You know, you're Super Bowl MVP. No one wants to hear from the third string quarterback here. So go ahead. Let's hear from the MVP.
Son, I just wanted to let you go first because honestly, you've passed me up as time has gone on. So I do value your opinion. But, you know, Bucky, I listen to everything on TV. We judge these quarterbacks. We watch them a lot. And I always say this, you know, I don't look at stats, numbers, any of that. I just kind of judge just them. I don't care about their offense. I don't care about their team. I care about the quarterback. But I want to see foundation things. What does he have? Is it size, speed, mobility, great arm, great accuracy? I got to see a couple things that I can count on when he becomes a pro. And that's probably the first thing I do by far, just to see, when we talk about it, what can he build on? What does he have that can make him a franchise quarterback?
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's obviously a multitude of things, and it's hard to really encapsulate, right, what makes the perfect quarterback. I think that's what makes this position so unique in all of sports, is the fact that there is no one way to do it. I mean, if you told me that in the Super Bowl we would have Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy, I mean, that's just two of the most polarizing quarterbacks and careers and trajectories to get to the ultimate game, you know, that really encapsulate what's our game is all about. And you got two guys that do it the exact opposite way. You got one guy who's a great decision maker, made it the hard way, barely made the football team, then thrust into the starting lineup. And then you got the guy who was, you know, just the destined to be a superstar type of character in the NFL, meaning at the pinnacle of the game. So there is no one way really for the quarterback to be defined as. I think the greatest thing that we see in our sport is that some coaches do a great job of really maximizing what they have in their quarterbacks year in and year out. It doesn't matter who they are, what the individual does well, they get the most out of them. So I feel like environment, coaching, and then of course just the overall will and tenacity and attitude of those particular players really shines through each and every year. And those are things that we really can't measure. And I think that's why there's so many surprises every year, from the combine to the draft to the season, that really shock us, because no one really knows what's within the heart, right? And that's the most important thing for this position.
You know, Bucky, Matt says that's really true, because we know almost for every quarterback, there's going to be just awful times, tough times, and all that. And do you love it enough to fight through them and still be the guy that they hope you can be? Right. I think that's something. I don't care how many times you interview these guys, you're not going to be able to learn that from them just by a couple of times, 15-minute conversations or whatever. So we find that out once they get in the league, how much they really love it and what are they willing to go to be successful. And that's like Matt said, you just can't judge that before the draft.
It's funny because you talk about what I think as a scout is a tough thing, because a lot of the quarterbacks that we talk about at the top of the board, they haven't really suffered the level of adversity that they will face in the National Football League.
Right.
So where do you get that? Where do you begin to kind of dig down deep to see if they are tough enough to handle that stuff? But another thing that has changed in the process is, Phil, and you guys, when you entered the league, Phil, particular, it was, you're the quarterback. This is my system. You need to figure out what we do. Right. Now, hearing you guys is, hey, we as coaches need to figure out what they do and build around them. What are the challenges in taking that approach when it comes to your franchise quarterback?
Well, let me say this first, and Matt's heard me say this a lot. but I think it's so true. Terry Bradshaw, I think I was going to the Super Bowl. Yeah, Matt knows what's coming.
Yeah.
And Terry Bradshaw, before the game, in the pregame, he says, listen, I trust Phil Simms, something like that, because he's already been to hell. Now it's time, and and really, I think so much of that is true. Like you said, the tough times, if you survive them, it makes you better, and it just helps you. So that's one thing I think about a lot, because here we are, Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence went through some tough times last year. First time probably in his career where the national media, a lot of people are second guessing him. Is he the real guy? Should we pay him? All that, and we'll get into that later. But that's really something I kind of learned just listening to Terry Bradshaw, because who went through more hell than he did before he finally made it work?
That's right.
In thinking about that, right? So much of that conversation, thinking about yesteryear, it was about sit and develop. I was in Green Bay. I watched Brett Favre become a 3-time MVP. Mike Holmgren was very hard on the quarterback. And
Right.
It kind of set an organizational philosophy that they were going to be very patient with their quarterback. They weren't going to throw him in. It took Aaron Rodgers 3 seasons before he saw the field. We now see them doing it with Jordan Love, and we've seen the success. Just from a philosophical standpoint, what are the benefits of a young guy sitting as opposed to playing right away?
Go ahead, son.
Thank you, Father. I think the biggest thing, right, is just that being able to sit in yeah, that's right, being able to sit in those meeting rooms, right, to digest that information slowly, right. It really is amazing how from your rookie year to your second, third, fourth year, how all of a sudden you might hear the exact same speech or sermon from that particular coach, but then all of a sudden you see it from a different light, from a different angle, right, and you truly understand what it is that they are saying, right? The depth of it, right? And I think that is really something that cannot be overlooked at this position. That's why typically, besides maybe someone like a Patrick Mahomes, we really see the majority of NFL quarterbacks kind of hit their peak in their late 20s, even early 30s, because of the fact that they just need to develop in this more of a man's type of football game that really is more so encompassing of, something that my father and I discussed all year last year. It became a negative connotation when you were labeled a game manager. And we discussed that being a game manager is actually the greatest compliment that you could receive in the NFL, because that's what every game is like. You win the first quarter, you lose the second quarter, you're getting crushed in the third quarter. Can you survive and win on the last drive of the game in the fourth quarter? And I think these are the great things about our position, and what, a lot of quarterbacks miss out on, because they are thrown into the action too quickly. It is overwhelming, and it really does kind of take them away from what they really do great. Zach Wilson is a great example of that. Even my former teammate Geno Smith is another great example of that. No coincidence that they're both Jets. So, let's not there at them. But, Geno, I knew Geno was a great football player. I knew that he was talented. I just knew that he was put in a position where it was difficult for him to succeed. Didn't have talent. We had a carousel at the coaching. We knew Rex Ryan had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because he was on a 1-year deal. And he was just battling an uphill battle that was going to be difficult for him to win in those situations. And I knew if Geno kept getting a shot, he'd ultimately become a really good pro. And we have seen that. And I think that's something that we really realized here in the football game to now, right, is that these QBs, they don't get an opportunity to really learn the game gradually. They are thrown into the fire because the GMs and the head coaches really demand them to have that instant success. And it's very difficult to do that.
Bucky, there's nothing like for a rookie quarterback standing on the sideline, watching 4 games, 6 games, whatever. They learn a lot. And I did that for 5 games, I think, my rookie year. And by the time that 5th game was over, I'm like, damn, I'm ready. I feel great about what I'm doing, and I can make this work if I get in there. So my first game, I tore it up. I went 6 of 12 for 37 yards. But the following game against Bill Walsh, who I always thought was going to draft me, I threw over 300. So, but it really was a great learning experience, and I felt so much. I felt secure by going in and being the starting quarterback. And, I wrote down some guys' names. Jordan Love. If
Mhm.
Jordan Love would have been thrown in there his rookie year, he might not even be in the league right now. He needed time. And I studied him a lot coming out. And I thought his throwing was just it was too all over the place. And he had time to sit, he'd learned. And Matt hears me say these things all the time. It's real. When you're a quarterback in the NFL, if you don't throw the ball better your second year than you did your first, then you don't have it. I mean, I expect those quarterbacks to see a difference throwing the ball and how they act and everything on the field in their second year. So Jordan Love had 3 years. He copied a lot of Aaron Rodgers, and it worked. Hey, Aaron Rodgers copied Brett Favre. Remember Aaron Rodgers, the way he threw the ball, put the ball on your shoulder?
Yeah.
What the
Yeah.
hell is that? Put it on your shoulder. That was the dumbest damn thing ever. But sorry, I'm taking some shots there.
Yeah.
But what happened to Aaron Rodgers? His third year, he started playing natural. What just comes natural to a thrower. And I remember being at their training camp. I was doing a preseason game. I saw a ball go down the field. And I go, wow, great throw by Brett Favre. And I went, that was Aaron Rodgers? And it was unbelievable. You could see the greatness in the practice by just watching him throw. So there's so much to it. And like I said, you got to love it and you got to work at your craft and know that it's going to be rough no matter what.
So it's funny that you bring up that, because now we can begin to have the Trevor Lawrence discussion, because his career has been a little up and down. Obviously,
Yeah.
he enters the league. He has Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer wasn't necessarily prepared for the pro game. Didn't do Trevor Lawrence any favors, because they didn't necessarily use some of the elements from the Clemson offense. They want him to play a quote unquote traditional pro style quarterback. He struggles. He then gets with Doug Pederson. You see a major jump in his game, 2022. Right. But then in the second year under Doug Pederson hands the play sheet off to Press Taylor, and he regresses and struggles a little bit after having some injuries. So when you guys look at the former number 1 overall pick, what do you guys see from number 16?
Well, I'll just say this coming out, I never said he's a generational player. I thought he was really good, but I think those tags put on him, it's like a negative to him. It just was overwhelming. Oh, and how's he going to live up to that going to Jacksonville early in his career with Urban Meyer? But I think many things have changed. He's a great Bucky. He's a good example. His throwing definitely improved from his first year to the second year. He kind of changed some of his mechanics, and I could see the difference right away. And I saw it, I think, in the Hall of Fame game. I went, wow, Trevor's kind of figured it out. And listen, I think he's a true franchise quarterback. He got beat up a couple times last year with injury. What did he do? He hung in there. He played hurt. They always say you got to play hurt, not injured. And he showed his team and the organization that he's got that in him. And I still think he's a franchise ability quarterback. And, I kind of say this a lot, and it's probably overstating, but I want to see him do what? I want to see him take over the team. I think he's close. I think the fact that he played so well or tried so hard after those injuries, I think he has a chance to take over the team, and everybody's going to look at him and go, he's the man. He's our leader, and let's follow him. So
what about you, Matt?
I agree. I think Trevor Lawrence is really primed for, taking that next leap in his progression as a quarterback, as a leader for the franchise. I think last year, I know statistically, and maybe just the way that we felt about the Jaguars, there was something left to be said, right? A little disappointment with that season. But for me personally, as I watched the player, I was actually like, I'd be really proud of Trevor if he was my son, because I know it wasn't pretty. I know it was tough. I know it was gritty. And, like Big Phil said earlier, I think last year was that year where like Trevor was in hell. He got rooted in it. And I feel like now he's going to be able to grow and become like a real man's man in the NFL game. And I think that's why I'm so excited for him. I feel like there's more pressure to me on Doug Pederson this year than there is on Trevor Lawrence. And I think just because, I've seen Trevor now show his toughness and his leadership, 2 years in a row. Now I need to see Doug instill more of that toughness and leadership into the entire football team, as a whole. This is a team that I thought really just played down to their opponents in a lot of cases, and also just didn't rise up or play to the level of preparation that they should have against some of the better opponents that they played. And really the biggest game was coming off the bye week about midway through the year when they played San Francisco and absolutely laid an egg. That was the week where I was like, man, the Jaguars leading up to, I was like, they could be a surprise Super Bowl, type of team that gets hot late. And I saw them fall in that game and just be overwhelmed. And that's where I kind of started to lose faith a little bit in Doug Pederson and his identity on that football team. So I think Trevor is really in a great position to take the team forward. And now they just need to come together and make it all work.
Bucky, don't you think, when you're talked about the way Trevor has been in his career, the fact that, now this is the phrase, but he got dirty last year, he got a little dirty. And this is all, I think it's only going to help him.
Yeah,
I really do. And I think, quite honestly, I think it was good that he got, beat up a little, got some people question who he is and all that. And man, I have no fear about what he's going to do this year. I think he's going to play well and do some of the things we talked about. What do you think about it, though?
So it's funny. And watching him, my dad has this phrase that he's always used with me. He said, "You can't be made of steel until you try by fire." And I think Trevor needed to go through last season to be the player that everyone in Jacksonville wants him to be. Because you got to remember, this dude has been hailed as the top quarterback in America since the time he was 15 or 16. Yeah. He wins all these games in high school. He goes to Clemson, wins the national title. He had always had the best team with him whenever he was in college. He didn't really suffer real adversity on the field until the Urban Meyer start. And then even that, it was quick to blame Urban Meyer. No one really blamed 16. Last year was the first time that people kind of removed some of the armor and really took shots at him. And so this will be an opportunity for us to see the competitor that lurks within him. And you guys said it. It's time to take over the team. Yeah. So this is when you're like, okay, it's now or never. If he is going to kind of make that leap into the ranks of the elite and become the guy that takes over the team, this is when he does it. But the question that I have, and look, Jordan Love talked about it with the Green Bay Packers, not having a true number one and how difficult that could be. Right. The Jaguars, basically, Calvin Ridley goes, and some would view Calvin Ridley as the number one. You had Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram in there. Internally, they believe that the game is best when it works inside out. They bring two playmakers over in Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis. But it's more like the team was built in 2022, where you just didn't know who's going to be the guy. What are the pros and cons of operating using that approach?
Go ahead, Matt. I'll let you go this time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love Brian Thomas. I think he's a phenomenal football player, and I think that he is going to, excel in the NFL game too. And I think that he kind of fits a little bit of that Alshon Jeffrey type of football player that was very successful with Doug Pederson early on in his career in Philadelphia. Now, the question really will be just, for me in this football team, I think they got enough skill group, right? Mm-hmm. If Gabe Davis can stay healthy, that's huge, right? Because then you can get guys like Duvernay into the lineup a little bit and use him intermittently to be that guy that stretches the field vertically and sideline to sideline. So that's important. But, for me, it's all about, can this team be physical? Can this team win in the trenches, both offensively and defensively consistently? I think they got enough skill guys. They got the quarterback. All that stuff is set. Now it's like, can you actually just win in the trenches? Because every year, this is exactly the discussion I feel like we always come to when it comes to playoff football. Texans are good. Here come the Baltimore Ravens. All right, Baltimore Ravens are good. Here comes the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's like each year it's all about just, can you win up front in the trenches in those big games? And that'll be the big question mark, I think, for the Jaguars. They got the finesse, but do they have, the brawn to go with it?
I think they fixed their offensive line. I mean, I expect that not to be a problem this year. And, Bucky, I'm not that – when I look at all these teams and judge everything, you don't have to have just all-stars as wide receivers. I mean, we paint that picture too much, and there's other ways to get it done. Get, like Matt said, get tougher, run the ball. I mean, you got a terrific running back. I mean, they got – but there's skill guys. I've never even thought that it would be a detriment to the team so far of this coming year. So, it's about all the little things. Show me an average offensive line, and I'll show you some average quarterbacks behind them.
It's funny because there's this theory called the 3 Ps in terms of what impacts the quarterback to play well. So it's the play caller, the playmakers, then it's the protectors. And so we talked about the play caller and Doug Pederson and how there's pressure on him and Press Taylor to make sure they put a great plan in place for Trevor. We talked about the playmakers and we feel good about that. But arguably the biggest question mark is the protectors up front. Can they protect Trevor Lawrence? Because as the quarterback goes, so goes the team. Mm-hmm. And as he goes, so goes the checkbook that Shad Khan is going to have to open up to pay the quarterback. So when we think about these escalating prices and $55 million probably being the target mark for maybe Trevor and some of these other quarterbacks. Right. One, do you pay Trevor? Two, how does it change the Jaguars when they pay the quarterback?
Well, listen, if you don't pay him now, you're going to have to pay him more later. I really believe that. I think I've already said that. You know, Trevor, he's a franchise quarterback. And even if he just has a whatever year he has, it's still going to be good enough where you go, we got the guy. Now it's about building other things. And, you know, I always put the O-line way up there. When I played with the Giants so many years, we had a really, really good tight end. And Mark Bavaro and Zeke Mowa, we had two of them. But our offensive line, hell, that was the cornerstone of our team. Yeah. And, you know, Bill Parcells spent 90% of it, well, maybe not, 80% of his energy ripping them all the time in practice because he knew how important it was to me to help me, but our whole game, the running, getting time to throw to the receivers, but helping the defense big time too. And I talk about it a lot, and we don't hear it enough, Bucky. We got to talk about O-linemen and what they're doing more and to how important it is to the team. And every year, so here we go. Last year, there's Kansas City and Baltimore. I would say both of them had pretty good O-lines, you know, and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar can overcome certain things. But San Francisco, overall, I think we look at it as a good offensive line. And then when you look at it every year, the top 10 or 12 O-lines are the ones usually in the playoffs. The one outlier we have is when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl and had to play with that offensive line. That was the one you go, how did you overcome that? And lots of things were, a lot of reasons why they overcame it. And they were close to getting it done, even with arguably one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL that year. So it is very interesting to see how teams elect to build their fronts, their offenses around these quarterbacks. It's something that I'm excited to continue to see what the Jaguars do. But look, man, guys, I can keep you all day if I could. This has been great. It's been a fascinating discussion, not only on the quarterback, but on team building. I got to make sure I jump on, make sure all of our viewers and listeners subscribe to the podcast, Sims Complete, so we can get all of the quarterback knowledge. You guys do a great job. I'm looking forward to coming over there and talking about it. I want all my Jaguars listeners to make sure that they rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, continue to do all the great things, and check out the stuff that we're doing on the Bleav Network on football. Until then, I'm Bucky Brooks. That's Matt Sims. Phil Sims, thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you guys next time.